First of all, good evening and welcome to our Wellness Committee meeting for May 18th. I appreciate everyone being very flexible in this very unique time in education. So please bear with me as I try to go through a Zoom meeting trying to manage all the participants. But it is important to have your microphone muted because a lot of times we will pick up some background noise that is somewhat disruptive to the presenter and everyone trying to listen to the presentation. Also, if you know how to use the raise hand feature, it's on the bottom right-hand side under when it says participants. Raise your hand. We're going to have some presentations tonight, and we would like to hold off the questions until the end of the presentation or proposals because it might be answered in the upcoming slides. But like we do at every start of the meeting, first we have public comment. So I'm going to read a couple of them that were submitted on the website before 4:30 p.m. today. So I'm going to go look at my other computer, so you're probably going to get the side of my ear when I read this, and I do apologize. First one is from Chris Lubke. I'm deeply concerned about how we are going to return to physical classrooms for not only my own health, but that I could be exposed to the virus and then expose my wife. She has asthma, and I'm deeply concerned that the virus would be even worse for her. Will FUSD students and staff have adequate PPE when we return? What other measures may be taken to keep everyone safe? We also have another one from Angela Singh, school counselor. Thank you for taking this time to get feedback on the mental health needs of FUSD community. We are facing times with many of our families experience financial, psychological, and social challenges. As the board evaluates the budget for next year, I hope that we prioritize the mental health needs of our students by continuing to fund important student support services. Reports of child abuse and domestic violence have dropped. Unfortunately, these decreases of cases show a vital need for support services like school counselors who are able to identify families in crises and direct them to support services. From my experience as a school counselor during this time, I hear time and time again how families are struggling to balance the demands of work with caring for their children. Students have also shared that they feel lonely, disconnected, scared, and worried. As we enter the next phase of preparing for the 2021 school year, I hope that the board recognizes that no child can learn if they are worried about their next meals, stressed out from witnessing their families in crises, and feeling alone and scared. Thank you for this opportunity to share my thoughts. I would be happy to further share my observations at the upcoming board meeting if you would like more feedback. And that was from one of our counselors. Okay, those were the public comments that we have received. So thank you for the public for sharing those. First next on the agenda is approve the minutes. You should have, in my invite, there should have been also an attachment of our meeting March 9th. So if anybody would like a motion to approve those minutes, you don't have to raise your hand on this one, just unmute your mic and then state that you would like to make a motion to approve.
I would like to make a motion to approve last minute's meetings.
Okay. Any discussion?
Yes, it marks that I was absent, but I was here.
Emily?
Yes.
We will clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more discussion? If not, we could make a motion to approve. A final motion. All in agreement? Just raise your right hand so I can see them. Thank you. Okay, we're going to go on next. We're very fortunate to have Ignacio here from the county. to give us a little presentation on wellness centers and health wellness centers. Um, he did a similar presentation, I believe, earlier in October of this school year at a closed session at one of our board meetings at 4:30. But he's here tonight to do the same presentation at the request of this committee. So please, if you have questions during the presentation, please write them down. And then at the end, either myself, Ignacio, or even Trustee Campbell may be able to answer some of the questions that you might have, next steps, or where we are as a district moving forward. So Ignacio, first of all, thank you for being here to give up your family meal time to be with us tonight. And I believe you have your presentation ready to go. And whenever you are ready, you may begin.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm gonna just share my screen here and then use that to talk through the presentation. All right. Everybody see that? Nice and clear, full screen. Thumbs up. Yep. Okay. All right. So good evening, everyone. I appreciate the invitation, and just on behalf of the county and the work that I do with the Center for Healthy Schools and Communities, I'm definitely having a longstanding partnership with Fremont Unified School District. And yeah, as we're all like, I guess in normal circumstances, we would all be having maybe some snacks in front of us, and I can get a sense of the room and things like that, and how everybody's doing, how everybody's feeling. So hopefully some of that energy transcends through this presentation. So yeah, so I wanted to just so thanks for the invitation again to speak on school health centers and wellness centers and the models and approaches. So I'm going to go into that quite a bit, and yeah, just start with the introduction of myself. I work with Alameda County Healthcare Services Agency. The department, the unit is called Center for Healthy Schools and Communities. And so we do work across the county with school districts and health service providers. My role is interim associate director, health access. And I coordinate all the school health centers in Alameda County, which I'll describe a little bit more. So through our work and through the center, as you can imagine, just thinking of the name of Healthy Schools and Communities, is we firmly believe that health and education are linked to academic success, stages of development and adolescent health, as well as the social connections and youth development approaches that really strengthen one's transition, not only from into being a young adult, but also transitioning into adulthood, as there's multiple stages that one goes through, and also really connecting with families and caregivers in this system through health and education. So it gives a bit of a description here. We're definitely working across sectors with school districts, with school administration, as well as with health service providers and youth development organizations and family service agencies. So we do this on a county-wide scale, and more so really are invested in how to really make effective coordination and systems impact. Without going into the details here, a lot of the work that we do is results focused. So we're really looking at not only like what are the systems and ways that we're building up the work that we do in partnership, but also that they have an impact. And so a lot of our work is evaluated, and we really look at the impacts of what we do so that we could both be informed by how we make adjustments and shift, as well as looking at the impacts that it has, whether it's through increased access, healthcare access, health insurance enrollment, food access, the connections around behavioral health and academic outcomes, anything along those lines. So these are the results focus that we that all of our programming, all of our partnerships, and all of us work towards. Let that sit for a little while so people can take a look. And then with those results focus, we have various strategies by region. And the main strategies that we have are school-based health centers throughout the county. school-based behavioral health initiative, which are partnerships with schools and behavioral health service providers, and then youth and family opportunity hubs, which is a combination of youth development, youth organizations, as well as family service agencies, and working and partnering with the family resource centers in school districts across the county. So I'm here to really just provide a general outline and focus of what we do around school health centers. I know this has been quite a bit of conversation in Fremont Unified for some years. And so school-based health centers, dental, and I'll get into the services with the little table that we have in the slides, but with comprehensive access to healthcare services for young people, as well as really an adolescent approach, adolescent-centered focused approach, and connection with schools and school administrators. We have 28 school health centers throughout Alameda County that we work with and oversee. All of them are run by nonprofit health providers. So I work with the various organizations throughout the county, really looking at offering integrated health and wellness services. And so this is the countywide map of where those 28 school-based health centers are located. So just take a minute without me going through where they're at, but so the 28 health centers are spread throughout the county, and there are some areas that you'll notice that don't have school health centers in there. One of them being the Fremont Newark area, which is, just wanted to point that out. And we can go into what the models are, as well as then also the other side of health and wellness services as wellness centers. So oftentimes there's different understandings of what a school health center, a school-based health center model is. And so this is the model that we have in Alameda County. Depending on where we're at in the state or even in the Bay Area, within school districts, there could be a different model of what makes up a school-based health center. What combination of school nursing to dental screenings, and then also having behavioral health providers and after-school youth enrichment programs. So I just want to give a little bit of a context that this is the model that we utilize for school-based health centers, school health center services, and also a description of what it is, and also just very basic what type of staffing there is. Some of it could get a little bit, there's a little bit more that can go into the type of staffing, but we really just wanted to give a sense of the level of health professional as it relates to the service. So you'll see, just going from the top down, one of the core elements of a school health center service model is medical services, which is everything from physical health, immunizations, confidential services, family planning, medical case management, sports physicals, etc. We have dental services. So not all of the health centers, not all 28, but we have a dental chair, dental exam room in 12 of the 28 school-based health centers. We also have behavioral health. So behavioral health services coordinated and offered through the school-based health center, as well as that connect to the school-based behavioral health initiative, which is an extension of behavioral health services that are provided district-wide. And then health education. So health education comes in a number of forms, but the main ones that we look at are clinical health education, which is one-on-one with an health educator or a nurse practitioner provider, along with the student. So that's the one-on-one health education. And then there's classroom health education. Classroom health education is really just exactly just that, going into the classroom and doing group level topics based on whether it's on healthy relationships, the anatomy, or even alcohol and drug use, any span of various health education topics, both classroom based. And then we have youth development. And youth development is really those activities and events that contribute to positive school climate, strengthening and providing opportunities for youth voice and youth leadership, as well as peer health education, so that youth then become voices of what's going on in, like, as it comes to young people and adolescent health. And then school-wide events such as health fairs. So those are the 5 core services in the school-based health center model um, that we have throughout Alameda County. And then just briefly, as it relates to like, how is this spread out, and as far as both the visit types and how many hours per week. So this is based on, it's about 1.5 years data, 1.5 years ago. But it was, but pretty much we average about, of the 28 health centers, 21 hours of medical services per week, about 14 hours of dental services, and then 26 hours of behavioral health and 20 hours of health education and youth development. And then you can see those visits throughout the county and how they broke out as percentage of various types of services. So into like, what does the facilities look like? Having a medical clinic is definitely, or medical exam rooms and dental exam rooms are definitely out of the ordinary for school-based or for school facilities. So all of the clinics, school-based health centers with those clinical exam rooms must meet state and federal licensing requirements. So this just goes into not only like what, it's just a bullet point to introduce that there are federal and state requirements that would be followed to establish facilities for those services, as well as looking into school access, because we do have school-based health centers that are school-based within the school facility and school-linked, which means that there's a community access point for the schools for either for other students to be able to enter, or that maintains the safety of the school itself. So there's a number of factors that go into the design of a school-based health center. So with that, I'm going to transition to wellness centers. And so with wellness centers, these are more common in schools. And I'll just give you a sense of like just the approach to wellness centers that we have within Alameda County. And then, yeah, you'll see some parallels, but you also see where the differences are between the two. So with this, we have a youth and family center model, which is a combination which brings together comprehensive services. And so this may be familiar once we go through it, of whether some components of these exist within some of the schools within Fremont. But the wellness centers can vary in size, can be large, small, depending on resources and partnerships. Oftentimes they're partnership based, so it's in addition to like the school health and wellness or the district health staff, there are also oftentimes other organizations coming on to provide the behavioral health services, partnerships around family support, as well as career and arts programming. And one of the key things is that youth voice and engagement is essential, as far as like both in the input, but also in the design, and also just ongoing for both services. And so for wellness centers, this is definitely just one of the areas to also highlight. So as I mentioned previously with the school health center services, these are common services. I'm going to say this is comprehensive, but these are common services of a wellness center, which include behavioral health, youth leadership, family support services, and then other services that may vary or may be specific based on either the school, whether it's a high school or middle school focus, where it's at, where the school is located. So the wellness center, these are the core services focused around these areas here. And so with the Wellness Center, it's really essential in bringing bringing partners to the table with mutual goals. And as I mentioned, it's like a lot of our work is very partnership based with schools, with health providers, as well as with local government, whether it's a city or other departments that are providing services and stakeholders in partnership with the school district. And so with the wellness centers, it's really also looking at opportunities to be creative, to share data, coordinate services, and really look at the level of students, the level of impact that these coordinated services are having with on students and with the adults who interact with them on campus as well. And so, let's see. Yep, that is the brief overview of just looking at Alameda County school-based health center model, as well as the wellness centers and the approach to wellness in schools. So I'm going to see if there's any questions, comments.
Yeah, you want to
And then I will
unshare your,
take-
Ignacio,
yeah.
you want to unshare your screen, and that way,
There we go. We can see each other.
and if you have a question, please use the raise hand. Trustee Campbell?
Oh, hi, good evening. Thank you so much for coming back again and sharing this information with our wellness team. It has been our hope, the school board that is, hope that we would continue this conversation around ensuring the health and wellness of our students. I did have a couple of quick questions. One is, can you share these slides with us so that we could have them for future reference? Maybe Mr. Bailey can email them to the team. That would be helpful.
Ignacio, is that okay if I share that with the committee?
Yes, that is definitely okay.
Okay, great. Let's see. You did mention that there was one slide where it showed the kinds of services that were being offered, and then you did a percentage of them. But you did say that the information was a little bit dated. What are you seeing in terms of school-based health centers and the types of services that are major needs that have bubbled up, say, in the last year or two?
Yeah, yeah. One of the key things. That's a great question. So yeah, so the data was from last year, 18-19 year. We're in 1920.
Mhm.
So it's the most recent data that we have. We have an evaluation cycle that usually goes about a year out. And so one thing, I'm just looking at the slide right here, but it's about in that year, last year, still about 46% of the visits are medical, which is incredible because it just reinforces the need that students have comprehensive medical needs, as well as this becomes a first point of entry, and for many students is the only source of healthcare that a student may get. But as far as like emerging needs, one of the areas that we've really been focusing on and our partners have really been focusing on is really around the coordination of health services, so that the services for students are not siloed. And so an example of that is moving towards integrated behavioral health, which many organizations have, especially at the health and community clinic partners, as you may be very well aware, is that there's really looking at bridging between medical and behavioral health, because there may be some things that surface in a clinical assessment with the medical provider that really is out of the scope of the medical practitioner, and then to be able to have that warm handoff and transition for behavioral health. So really a lot of it has been, we're seeing a lot more students coming back for multiple services. And so that demonstrates that there's both a coordination of the work of the services happening, but also that communication across disciplines is happening, which really may not have been the case 10, 15 years ago. And so with that being said, that's one of the things that, as far as like what are the students' needs, I mean, there's so much that comes up by year to year, and also as well as by geographic area, right? With the city, the neighborhood that students may be in, whether it comes to exposure to community violence, or the school has had some traumatic experience within the school, that then the health center is part of that response, along with the administration. So on those other areas, it does vary based on what may be presented at the school and in the community. But the health centers have been definitely models. One of the key things in our approach to school health and wellness is that the service providers on campus are part of the cost teams, and the cost teams are site-based. Coordination of anything that then becomes part of the surfaces from students' needs throughout the school year, that is not being caught later in time when there could be an opportunity for more immediate both referral and communication between service providers.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. And then my last question is, you said there were the models were the school-based health center or a wellness center. A wellness center is typically like a school links kind of model. So it's not actually on the campus.
Not necessarily.
Not
So yeah.
necessarily,
So wellness centers can have an actual facility within the school campus, and so there's school-based and school-linked. And school-based are those that are physically located within a school facility, and then school-linked are those that have access to and are partners with certain school sites, school locations. And so wellness centers are oftentimes within the school campus itself. And so it could be like a wellness room with certain private rooms for like behavioral health for one-on-one confidential types of conversations, as well as having group space, a multi-purpose room, or some type of group space that is also for holding groups, holding youth leadership programs, maybe having access for a number of different varieties, but really like a multi-purpose room. But one of the key differences I would say is that it doesn't have the state licensing requirements, because the key service that is different between the two are the medical and dental services that are typically not part of a wellness center. Although the school nurse may have access for a triage to see a student, a cot room for just, student comes in with a headache or some cramps or something along those lines, that is a place to rest, as well as to also get snacks. If students are coming in hungry, may have missed breakfast, there may have some extra food there as well for students, so that there can be some level of refocusing back into the classroom.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to lower my hand. I don't know how to make it go down.
Okay, Sabin? Ms.
Yeah,
Hill?
this is Sabina Hill. I'm one of the moms from the Washington High School. And I actually had a couple of questions. You had said on one of the slides, the number of service hours was 21 hours per week. How do you schedule your providers? Is it on an as needed basis, or is it always 21 hours? And I'll let you answer that first.
Yeah, that's a great question. So as a county, we partner with community clinics and behavioral health agencies that are the direct service providers. So they're the ones that have staffing on campus. For the average, the table that I put up that demonstrated the average hours per week is countywide. So we have a minimum number of hours that we require as a county agency, because we provide a base allocation for those 28 sites. And in doing so with the 20 hours a week, it can be scheduled based on some clinics, some school-based health centers are at 2 days a week, which would be about 16 hours. Some are at 3 days a week, and there's a few that are at 5 days a week. So 5 days would be 40 hours.
Offered? Is it after school or during school?
Yeah, so they are during school. So
Mhm.
they can be as early as 7:30 in the morning to about 4:30. I would say that's kind of the range of time, is about 7:30 to 4:30. And sometimes it can shift. There's a couple of the sites that we have that are school linked, which are not within a school facility. They're next door to a school at maybe a youth center or some outdoor community entrance. And so those hours may be extended. So they may start maybe shifted to other times. But for the most part, those services that are within a school facility are definitely match and mirror the school schedule, both to have access before school and after school as well.
How does a student make an appointment?
So students can make appointments right there at the front desk within the health center. So it's pretty much you walk in and it with the school administration and also the health center partners, which are oftentimes community coming back to get the school schedules for the year or get their books, get their student IDs, whatever process there is in August, consent forms that for certain services have to be signed off exam, then those consents have to be submitted before a student can make an appointment.
Okay, and my very last question is,
So I gave
how have you been
a little
using
bit broader
the
answer
times?
than
Sorry. How have you been using these last 3-4 months to provide support to students?
Mhm.
Has there been any kind of telehealth videos?
Mhm. Yeah, that's a great question. Most definitely. So it had not been the practice prior for school-based health centers to use telehealth, whether it's in person. And with this time, both because of state policy and state laws for reimbursement that shifted, allowed telehealth to be a more common practice for reimbursement through Medi-Cal, for example. And so with that oftentimes limited the reimbursement oftentimes limit what can or can't be done. And so with that expansion of telehealth for reimbursement, there has definitely been a lot more, and that is the most common way. So all of the health providers have shifted to a telemedicine, and telebehavioral health model, which is primarily by phone, but also I would say out of the 28 health centers, the majority of them closed because school facilities are closed. Without, then the health providers cannot access their space. And even if they did access their space, there's no janitorial coming in at night. So 5 of the health centers have been open countywide. And so we've been promoting that throughout our partners of where open adolescent health facilities are available. And so and there's been, similar to any other health providers, they are doing their screenings and ensuring that the entry point is through phone and minimizing in-person contact.
Right. Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you. I don't see any other hands raised. No, I just want to make a comment before Ignacio. Ignacio, thank you very much for
Mhm.
meeting with us tonight. We hope to meet with you quite a bit more over the next couple of years. I think as a district employee, and I think as a board, we are very committed to really seeing out what could benefit our students in Fremont the most. When you look at that map, a lot of the centers are in the northern part of our county. But I am going to say is that I'm meeting with senior management, I believe Thursday of this week. There's possibly some new funding coming to Fremont from the county that will help address some of these issues with a position that hopefully senior management, we have a draft kind of contract with the county right now. We're kind of working out the logistics to help us build this, because it is something that I think the board is very committed to, along with at least my department and a lot of the counselors and school psychs and all the above, to making sure all the needs are met for our students. We're starting slowly at a couple of our sites, but we know that we really need it to expand that, and more importantly, get more of our outside providers with that coordination, Ignacio, as you stated a couple of times in your presentation. That's going to be one of our focus areas next year, is myself doing a much better job with our outside providers to make sure that we do have that coordination, so that family doesn't get lost in the shuffle or doesn't know how to navigate the system. So it is something that hopefully the county will continue to look at Fremont, because it's kind of disheartening when you look at that map and you got nothing in Fremont or Newark. Everything is in the northern part. I know that's out of your jurisdiction too, Ignacio. So this is not a blast at you for that, but it is something that we hope to build off this. And once this position gets funded and approved by senior management, and more importantly, the board, hopefully in June, so we can start to hire and get this person started as soon as possible at Fremont. It would only be a Fremont person, and we would be able to hire that person. So it is something that it's not official yet. We're working on some draft language right now, but hopefully we have it finished within the next month, so the board could approve that expenditure that the county, no cost to us at the district. It's all county funded, so it's a big win for us.
Mm.
And
Yeah,
it
that's
looks
great to hear.
looks like any other questions for Ignacio? Trustee Campbell?
No, I don't have any questions per se, but I just want to acknowledge what Mr. Bailey just said about us, the board, really being committed to making sure that the health and wellness is a priority for our students here in Fremont. I know our board is, as he said, is very much interested in pursuing this. Also wanted to just you mentioned a couple times about a community health centers that are available to help support that. Just want to mention, Tri-City Health Center has been a friend of Fremont Unified way before I started as a board member, and I've been on the board for 8 years. So they've had a long-standing relationship with them. We do our health fair is a joint venture together with the school district. So they actually, and I know a couple of my colleagues are on the call now. We actually are doing some school links work with Fremont Unified. So just wanted to keep that, put that out there so that the committee will know that there is a community health center in Fremont, not too far from Irvington actually, that is able to support them in their endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Campbell. Ignacio, thank you for giving up your night tonight with us. Hopefully you can enjoy the rest of your night with your wife and kids. And hopefully we'll be in contact soon, because it is something that I think we definitely want to pursue in Fremont. So hopefully we could build that connection. And Ignacio also sits on a county meeting with me and the city of Fremont and Tri-City called the Fishy Group. He's also part of that. So it is something that is starting to gain a lot of momentum at this end of the county. So Ignacio, thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Yeah, likewise. Well, thank you all, and thank you for also just the investment of time that you have as a wellness committee, and definitely appreciate that. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Okay, Jasmine. Jasmine, there was a mix-up that I apologize at the last meeting that she was all ready to present at the last meeting, and there was a mix-up of communication that was my fault. I'll take responsibility for that again. So Jasmine, you're up now, and if you'd like, you should have share my screen capabilities on your end if you would like to share your proposal, or I could share it from my end, whichever you prefer.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. If you're able to share it, that would be great, because I'm on my phone. My computer isn't working right now with Zoom. So if it's easy, otherwise I can try to pull it up on my phone too.
You guys see it?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay, how about now?
Almost.
I think
Okay.
it's coming in. Yeah.
It's coming in now.
Yeah. So I'm on video. Sometimes my internet's a little spotty. If you notice that you can't hear me, I will just turn off my video. So first of all, as we go into the support for mental health and wellness in Fremont, what I just kind of want to do, because this is addressing all of the needs that we still have, I really want to put just huge thanks to this, the efforts that the board has gone to look at the mental health and wellness of our children, all that we have accomplished. Like Mr. Bailey was saying last time we met, that we now have these elementary counselors. Our specialists now have parity pay in alignment with teachers. There's just so much that we are only funded as so much money in Fremont, and I really see us as a compassionate city, moving forward to supporting our children who are really going to be our next generation. So I kind of just want to highlight those positives first, as I go into this. And I'm totally in agreement with wellness centers. I love them. And that would be fantastic, especially if we get funding outside of Fremont. So what we can do is first go to the next, we can turn the page here. And this is a document I'm happy to, if you all would like, I'm happy if Greg wants to email that out to you as well afterwards. So what I did is I just collected information from around Fremont, but also really listening to our students that are currently in our wellness committee, and tried to get, and I, as well as the parents, trying to find out where the needs were overall. And I'll just kind of briefly summarize some of these. Really, there was a need to know where counselors were, when they were available. Some students felt really hesitant. Counselors were reporting high level of needs for students needing social emotional support. There had been reports from various counselors saying that there was a lot of students saying that they felt depressed, self-esteem issues, abuse in various forms. Specialists themselves, and I'll go into ratios in a bit, but because they are covering and trying to support so many students, they themselves were starting to experience high levels of stress and anxiety. And so really looking at how we can support these people, because we need them. We need to still have them here on board with us. So other things were, specialists, in addition to that, really need to be able to take a day off. Unlike teachers who have substitutes to be able to take an actual physical day off, specialists do not have substitutes or some sort of substitute pool around that they can kind of share loads if they need to. So that just adds to some of the fatigue that they might be feeling. In addition to that, overall, the counselors, teachers, staff were reporting that there was huge delays in the child find law, not being able to be held in compliance because of a highly impacted school psychologist caseload. So there's basically, imagine you have SSTs and you have a huge load of students that really need to be tested, but the psychologist caseload is so huge that it goes far down in the queue, and it's not able to be implemented in the right time. School psychologists are not able to properly implement counseling services either, because of their high volume of assessments. So this means they're really just becoming testing machines, just test, and really only able to focus on those super high crisis interventions. And part of the differentiation between a school psychologist and counselor is that when a student is in special education, they may need that additional psychology, counseling support. And counselors are really meant for more of a temporary basis, whereas the school psychologist, um, in some cases, they have services where they provide weekly counseling. And I think that there's a lot more students they feel would need counseling, but they're just so busy with all of their testing that they're doing. Nurses reported extremely high volumes of duties, including supporting diabetics during lunch, hearing and screening, mandated tasks, and growing numbers of special needs students. There was a lot of concern from the nurses about the elimination of the healthcare coordinator and potential clerk positions or reassignment of that. Um, let's see. Parents also wanted their child to be included. This goes into inclusion. Did not want their child segregated from general ed core programs. We have some parents that refuse to sign the IEP if they're offered other school placements or only take partial placements. And it's because they want to stay in their community. They want their own, they want their child to be raised by the school in their own community. They don't want to go outside. And they feel like, you know, if general ed kids get to go to their home school, they feel like they should too. And how can we as a district support that? Also looking at supporting students with disabilities through an MOU. This is kind of going into some nuances, but really looking to roster students or registering them, make sure that they looking at them having a seat in general education. We do have students in special education go to prep schedules. However, we don't necessarily always have space for academics. And so that becomes kind of a back and forth of, you know, hey, gen ed teacher, math teacher, would it be okay if Johnny came to the class, even though you're full? So really it's looking at how can we provide what is faith, free, appropriate public education and least restrictive environment. And then also really around that, if that goes forward, is looking at supporting teachers. Teachers, gen ed teachers, special ed teachers, they all need support. They need training. They need coaches by them. And especially during these times, I think the educators, the teachers themselves, having some sort of backup support is really imperative too, that they can call upon and get that help that they need, especially as schools do start to come back in. So this next part is, we can move to the next page. This just looks at information. So the first column is pretty much our ratios in Fremont. The second one is what professional associations recommend. And then comparable districts is the third one. So what I did is I kind of looked at what we're at right now, which is, you know, school psychs 1 to 1400 ratio. And then underneath I put +4. So I said, let's say that we added 4 psychologists. That would move us down to a 1 to 1200 ratio. Now, ideally, the recommendation is 1 to 500 to 700. So we're still several hundred kids off, but we're getting a little closer. And you can see over here in Oakland, San Francisco, it's still much lower. Same things if you look at the counselor right now, 1 to 710 ratio, it should be a 1 to 250. A lot of the districts still are really around 1 to 450. The nurse ratio actually concerns me probably the most. We look at the nurse ratio of a 1 to 2400. If we added 4 FTE, that would be about a 1 to 2100. A lot of these ratios at other districts are about a 1 to 1300, 1 to 1250. And nurses, their ratios, as the association says, is really weighted because some kids are healthy, some have complex needs, and it just varies from child to child about how much need there is. Speech therapist caseload is probably closer, and the reason that that's a little bit closer is because we actually have it in the ed code. So getting these other specialists in ed code is another fight, another day. But that is that's for later on. So then looking at, I took a look at the May revise. There is a section in here about learning loss mitigation. They are proposing one-time investments of 4.4 billion from the federal government, from a coronavirus relief fund, as well as the government emergency education relief fund. So, you know, as I talk about all this, I'm in full recognition of the difficult financial times that all of us are facing as the world. So, however, if that goes through, moving on to the next page, there is highlighted, it does say that part of that funding is to go towards provision of health, counseling, or mental health services, which I think is really great that California is thoughtful in recognizing that there's a lot of issues going on currently, and reaching out to specialists. Some of them are having to do well checks just to see, you know, how students doing. They're struggling a lot all day at home. Some they can't get a hold of. And, you know, as we know, there's been a lot of break-ins in Fremont. While some of that might be adults, I think some of them were youth. And to me, behavior is communication. And so they're trying to communicate something to us. And we don't know what it will be like when they come back, but we want to make sure that they know they're cared for, loved, and well supported. So this just kind of, we can move to the next page. This is just a visual for you of kind of what inclusion is. So this is really the spirit of the law. If you look at that, we have the different levels that we integrate people. And further down, there is a senator, I believe, that is looking to amend the inclusion law. And so, but his research has demonstrated that students with disabilities, when they are included, they actually are resulting in higher rates of academic performance. We've also seen that in Fremont. Again, to commend the efforts that we have had. We do have some inclusion programs, and they have shown to be very successful, both social emotionally and academically. We've even had some students in special ed that have surpassed the general ed students in some of their testing, which is pretty incredible. So, and really it's changing the way we look at inclusion, that it's not just a place, it's actually a set of services. So if we're able to frame it that way, every student is really a gen ed student. They're a student of FUSD, and we're looking at how can we provide services for that student and let them feel at home in their community whenever possible. So I'm going to move to the next page, and this just shows I went through that actually. So that's the superintendent ed code on expansion of inclusive practices that I just went over. So how do we provide inclusion? This is just really a brief overview, but it's looking at the comprehensive training to support all levels of students digitally in person, and provide support to all educators, gen ed and sped. Some of that can be done through creating videos. The CNI, the inclusion specialist, can create videos and content that educators can watch. There's also in-person training that's involved. But it's really addressing the fears and concerns that people have, and how can we support them so that they feel comfortable and they feel like they know what to do with students. The other thing that we're kind of looking at right now is the idea, or the piloting of looking at an RSP weighted caseload. So currently in Ed Code, we have resource students as 28. But again, like the nurses, sort of weighting those students. So the mild, moderate, or moderate kids that have more needs, they could be weighted because they're needing more time, and to be able to support that site on comprehensive. And again, looking at it from the framework of it's a set of services, not a place. So their home is their homeschool community. How can we support that? Especially looking at COVID-19. These kids in mild, moderate, and moderate, we have to bus them. And that means also some resource teachers are spread across sites. So it's like, how can we support the community kind of staying together all together and work collaboratively together. Looking at the potential of reserving seats, Oakland does something similar to this. We also have a lot of districts, and again, recognizing some districts have more funding. I totally acknowledge that. Some do have this completely open, where students have that flexibility per the IEP and the team's decision. Hey, the student, they're great in math, they're math savants, so let's let them go to gen ed math with support. Whereas maybe they're struggling in reading, so then they go to a smaller environment, or maybe they're having sensory issues, and so they can go to a learning center. They don't have to be, it's not like all day every day included. It's what the child needs, and it's opening the flexibility for that. What we saw with the inclusion work that we have done is that because we've had special education teachers in a gen ed classroom, or para educators that are properly educated, that are also helping gen ed students, we also saw some data that showed drops in referrals to special ed, which I think has huge benefits. Like I mentioned before, the transportation, although it helps the students stay in the community for the district, and it could save the district a lot of money not having to bus those students and not have to deal with the liability either. Into that, when a student's in their home school, or siblings, they have access to their after school activities. Students get to participate there. When students are in a mild, moderate program, or moderate that's not their home school, and they're being bused, they only have an option to take the bus at one time. And so they're missing out on those extracurricular activities. And those could be the important components for happiness for these students that are struggling academically, especially. So, and again, so you kind of look at where the funding is, and again, this is with full respect of what upper management decides, the board, directors. This is my input that I took with those that are on the ground. So just sharing with you as part of a brainstorming ideas of how we can support these students more. There is some funding in LCAP, so I kind of presented it as that. Again, it's ultimately up to those that vote in the LCAP group, the board, the upper management, deciding these things ultimately. But I think we can, as a wellness committee, talk about perhaps what we think could be an option for something, or what we feel we may not be the final deciders, but we could give some input. So I look at how can we add more support in the schools where it doesn't cost as much money. So I'm looking at school counseling interns, school counseling supervisor incentive programs. Again, I can email that, or perhaps Mr. Bailey can email this out so you can see more of the fine details of this. And again, this was in collaboration with working with each of these groups to find out specifically, what do you need? So that is what they really felt could help them, is adding in 10 school counseling interns. They really like the youth and family services MFT interns. They found them very well for support. The second thing is looking at the school psychologist supervisor incentive program and practicum students. So again, that's really kind of training, for given some sort of grant, this would be fabulous. Or if there's any portion of this, that would be fantastic. We're kind of laying out the vision. You can kind of fine tune of what would be great. We have some districts that do have like a lead school psychologist supervisor that really helps with ongoing training and practice, provides ongoing information. The next thing is looking at the practicum speech and language pathologist supervisor incentive program. That's a similar thing. Our speech therapists, as many towards the top of FUSD know, is really hard to get speech therapists. We end up contracting a lot of our speech therapists because they're getting benefits and different incentives. So we really want to also retain the speech therapists we do have. So looking at possibly training potential practicum students that come our way, and maybe they'll fall in love with FU. Want to come on board, be reading loyal. The next flesh out in many different ways, but looking at how can we care for our current specialists that
I'm
are
sorry, Jasmine?
exhausted, adding
Jasmine?
staff. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
You broke up a
Yes.
little bit there. Can you go
Okay.
about
Sure.
4 sentences? You were cut out.
Oh,
You
sure.
start
Thank
talking about right after approving $200 a semester for training for the psychs.
Okay, thank you. I just turned off my video. Is that better? Can
Yes,
you
it
hear
is.
me? Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. Thanks. Okay. So again, looking at the practicum student speech and language pathology intern incentive program, similar to the school psychology program, they have just again sharing and supporting, providing materials. What our goal with this is to support these students that will become speech therapists, and we're hoping that they will fall in love with Fremont and decide to join up with us, because we always have lots of openings for speech pathology therapists, and there's a big need for them. The next item is just looking at itinerant full-time substitutes for nurses, counselors, psychologists, speech and language pathologists, program specialists. Really looking at the potential of itinerant specialists. These are people that could serve as a substitute when staff is out. It could be determined how that works exactly with each group. There are nuances of each group of how to accomplish that. Sometimes people know in advance when they're going to be out and they can prepare a case, or different nuances could be arranged, or protected time in the future, if they're not able to take on half of a case, because that's kind of hard to take part of the testing. But really just looking at creative ideas of how do we provide support for our specialists if they don't have a substitute? So ultimately, when we do have support for our specialists, it's going to increase mental health that will the health of our students too, because they'll be able to be focused. This is just looking at increasing the FTE, like I talked about earlier, with the ratios, the cost of that. And again, I'm just kind of sharing ideally the needs, recognizing the situation that we're in right now. And looking at that, we do have some students that are unduplicated. So really looking at how we want to move forward as a society in Fremont and support those students in the mild, moderate, severe II programs that allows them the flexibility per the decision of these, the IEP team that are, experts with their students, how the student can be supported, because we have a lot of parents that say, my child picked up all these behaviors, and if a student is in a contained classroom their whole life, that is going to be their reality. So not to say small classrooms and pull out aren't always beneficial, because they certainly are. But again, it's looking at those opportunities to support the social emotional health of those special ed students. So that just kind of goes into it. And that's it. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Jasmine, for that proposal. I appreciate it, and I'm sure Trustee Campbell was taking notes on that too, as I know she's also always an advocate for more student support services. So if you have any questions, please raise your hand. And it looks like Trustee Campbell.
I didn't raise my hand. I think it didn't lower from the last time, but I do want to say thank you, thank you, Jasmine, for this presentation. This information is very, very helpful, and I'm sure Mr. Bailey, when he does his annual report to the Board of Education, this will be part of that presentation to the Board of Education, because I think you do have some really good information in here that's very helpful. We do recognize that we don't have enough counselors and speech therapists and all of the resources that we need to be able to help our special needs children. So this would be really great. I love the fact that you tied it to the LCAP, so that when as we're looking at LCAP funding, we can be looking at some of these also to be funded through the LCAP, because as you know, the general fund is pretty much tapped out, for lack of a better word, because of the funding that we get from the state. So again, Jasmine, thank you so much for this presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jasmine. I was just going to comment. We were very fortunate to hire somebody in a vacant position since January, Jen, from our special ed department, as Jasmine knows. Also, part of the reason why she was such a great hire for us is that she does have the capability and ability to supervise interns as our counselors. So it is something that we're going to start exploring, hopefully within the next year, to see what it looks like if we could have our own supervisor of interns. We do have interns with the city of Fremont, which are very valuable, but it's somewhat costly for our sites to pay for that. This is nice because Jen's already paid out of LCAP funds through some LCAP budgets, but she has the ability to supervise interns. And that's what that's why she stuck out so highly for us for this position, because we would like to go in that direction where we start to supervise our own interns. It's cost savings for us, and more importantly, it's a benefit for all of our students and staffs who can't afford an intern right now. So it is something that hopefully within a year, Jasmine, I think we need to start exploring supervising our own interns. I think that's a win-win for everybody. I think the
Yes.
board will approve of that. It's a money saver. And plus we're growing our own within.
Yeah.
So it is something we're very much looking forward to. So Jasmine, thank you very much for presenting this.
Thank you so much.
That's exciting, Mr. Bailey, that we will be able to get our own interns. I
Yeah,
mean,
she's a go-getter. She just
Mhm.
started about 2 weeks ago. It's kind of hard when we're doing this distance learning, but we've met many times virtually. Um, and she has some very good ideas, and hopefully we could start really looking into fall and winter of next year moving forward.
Mhm.
So we're very
That's very
fortunate
fun.
for
Yes.
Jen.
Because that way we can expand our services as well, so
Exactly.
that we could do more for our students.
Yeah.
And so that's very, very exciting.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing
Okay.
that. Mhm.
Okay. So Aria, I'm completely want to apologize for stealing your meeting, but I wanted to make sure the proposals and presentations went. So now I'm going to hand it off to you. Last thing on the agenda is upcoming topics that this wellness committee would like to see moving forward. Any suggestions? I guess you could get some input right now.
So yeah, really quickly, I think before we discuss this, a member had reached out to me. I think Emily, I think she's here, and she wanted to discuss something that we had proposed in an earlier meeting about getting student feedback from our wellness centers. And I think that, you know, she wanted to mention some stuff about the Irvington Wellness Center, and then we can also open it up to anybody else in this meeting that maybe wants to talk about any of the other wellness centers in the district.
And I would just like to make one comment on that. I spoke briefly about that draft contract we have with the county right now with that funding and position that hopefully will get approved by the board in June. Part of that contract is getting student survey results from Irvington and some other schools that we're looking to expand. And then Trustee Campbell, I don't want to put you on this spot, but we submitted a survey out to our secondary students along with either an admin or counselor at our secondary sites for a grant that Tri-City is going for. So Trustee Campbell, do you want to talk about that survey real quick and what how we're going to move forward with that?
Okay. Yes. Actually, there's two of them, Mr. Bailey. We talked, you may have gotten some information from Dr. Zamora today, but the one that you're speaking about is a community planning group that we have been working on, and you've sat on that community planning group with us, and we're looking at substance use and and coming together to make a plan around how we can help our kids with drinking and smoking and vaping and marijuana use and all of those kinds of substances that are not good for them. And so we put out through a grant that we received, we're going to survey some students to figure out, you know, what their needs are. And we're also surveying the administrators at some of the schools also to get feedback on what they're seeing. And then we're going to put this sort of community needs assessment together. And hopefully once we get that, we'll roll that out and share it with the community. And we can look at ways in which we can get some funding to help support us through an implementation strategy. Because counties all across the state of California are coming together to do work around student wellness, particularly as it has to do with different types of substances. So that's one. And then the other one that we're doing is more of a, and Dr. Sneed is actually on the call, is more of a sort of a hands-on kind of an assessment to look at students who may be suffering from like stress and anxiety right now. It's an assessment because we wanted to, and again, it was given through another grant that we received. We wanted to take a look at, especially in this COVID-19 environment, how are students coping, particularly seniors who won't have their traditional graduations, who haven't been able to see their friends, and how are they coping with this new environment and this new way of having to learn, the distance learning, and then we're offering resources and support to help them through that process as well. Dr. Sneed, did you want to say something else about this?
Hi, Desiree. Thank you for inviting me to this meeting. And I spoke to Locke, and he also let me know this was happening. So this is really great. Hi, everyone. I'm the Director of Behavioral Health and Social Services at Tri-City. Desiree did a wonderful job of describing the process that we're planning to use for Ticket Health. At this point, we have identified a behavioral health provider who's a psychologist who will step in when our screening tool, which will be administered to, I think we're targeting about 100 students at Irvington. So when those students are flagged with this tool as being high risk, we're calling it red flags, then Dr. Prasad, the provider, will reach out to the student and have a brief session with the student to provide support, but also to do some triage to figure out, is this a student who needs more intensive therapy? Is this an acute crisis that can be managed relatively briefly? What needs to happen at that point? So that will be her role. We're also using our behavioral health care coordinators, who are kind of a bridge between patients and providers in our agency. So they will act as the people who will do the kind of the overview of the screening results. So once they take a look at the scores from the screening, then they will make the referral to our provider, who will then do the actual follow-up with the student. So we did this project, or a portion of it, a little bit earlier in the year in 2019 in October. And we were able to actually do some of the visits in person with students who were considered red flags. And that was really terrific that we had that opportunity with the middle school. And because of COVID, of course, now we can't do it in person, but it's been terrific that Desiree and Locke have really taken the lead on helping us think through how we could do this remotely in a way that was very safe. And so we're happy that we're going to be able to do this. Our goal is to get it done, to screen 100 students by the end of the school year.
And the school that we did before, Mr. Bailey, I think I mentioned this to you, was Horner?
It was Hopkins.
Oh, Hopkins. It
yeah.
was Hopkins. Okay. So it was Hopkins. And so we're really excited about that. I mean, we're able to help students who are really have the biggest needs in our district. And so we're excited about that. So thank you for letting me sharing. I will stop sharing now and let you finish up with the meeting.
Okay, Aria, back to you. I apologize for that. It looks like Emily also has her hand up.
Emily, if you want to go ahead with your feedback on the Irvington Wellness Center.
Right. Okay, cool. So I just remember like you guys saying before that you wanted students to kind of go to their schools and like scout out what the wellness centers there were like. So I kind of just wanted to let you know a bit about it. So Irvington's Wellness Center, I feel like Miss Campbell visited it before, I'm pretty sure. But it opened this year. A lot of the activities that we have in it are like just kind of like stress reducing activities, I guess. So it's like coloring and like comfy couches and stuff. And it's also only open at lunch. It's kind of like my hope and something that I've been like talking with our admin about throughout this year, to be able to keep the wellness center open throughout the entire day. And this kind of also came from the fact that our wellness center, the room that we use for it, is the literal replacement of our RC. So we don't have the RC anymore, and it's a wellness center now. But if you kind of think about it, a lot of the same students who get sent to the RC because like they had like a misfit in the middle of class, right? But that's kind of like very similar to the type of student who would go to a wellness center, except a wellness center would be like proactive and productive to like helping the student, whereas an RC kind of just like takes a student and puts it into a different environment where they're not like quote unquote disturbing other students. So that's kind of our wellness center right now. We also have like a separate room where the school psychologists can meet up with students, but that's only by appointment, and that's only with like quite a few students in our entire school. So if a student like wants to just I guess regularly like meet with someone to talk about like mental health, it would just be their counselor, which like leads back to all of the issues with having very few counselors at our schools. Often the counselors aren't at school, or often like we don't really always know their office hours, or students aren't just able to like change when they're going to have a struggle and decide that based off of whether or not the counselor is readily available. So that was something that obviously having more funding to keep the center open throughout the entire school day would have been great. Another thing that we're doing right now is I think we're opening what we call a virtual wellness center, but it's not, we plan for it to not be open for just the duration of COVID-19. So this is nice because it's funding that's going towards a virtual wellness center that can also be open during the summer, I believe. And I think it's, or like what my vice principal told me is that they like repurposed Kaiser funding for licensing and subscriptions towards a virtual wellness center that will be accessible on like tablets, or like, yeah, on like tablets in the center, and also just like from home, as well as like online sites and programs and tools. So that's what they're looking into right now. I think I can also make a comment about in response to what was just said about like how seniors are coping, because I am a senior, if that's appropriate. Can I do that? Okay, I'll just do that then.
Yes, you can. Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's for seniors specifically, it's not just so much this feeling of like, oh, I lost my graduation, or oh, I can't see my friends. That is making me sad. It's not like, in my opinion, it's not so much that. It's more so of the fact that like you are moving on with your entire life and you are entering adulthood, but apparently virtually. And so like the way that I interpreted it, or like the way that I'm feeling right now, is that like I always thought these activities like senior breakfast, or like prom, or like even like ditch day, not to like support that, but ditch day, like I always thought, oh, like those are kind of dumb, like they're like really superficial, right? But like through going through it myself, and like the entire like march of like college decisions coming out, kind of really hits you that like once you get into college you actually have to go, like and it's like the realization that you're like actually moving on with your life. I think that that's what's most stressful and like saddening, and having these like quote unquote superficial activities like ditch day, or like senior breakfast or whatever, it kind of helps like make that, or like make it seem less serious, or make it a bit more of a fun process. I don't know like what type of like wellness resources we could necessarily offer seniors, but any resources that are like similar to helping the ease out of high school might in turn like help many of the other issues. I think they're like very correlated. Yeah, that's my opinion.
Very good opinion. I like hearing that. Thank you for sharing your personal story.
If there's anybody else that wants to talk about wellness centers at their school or any feedback about anything that they've seen, I know at Mission, I believe for us, we had plans to open it. I don't know if it was at the end of this year or at the beginning of next year, but we actually have not opened our wellness center yet. But if anybody else has any comments about that. Yeah, Lavanya?
Hi, yeah. So, I'm from American High School, and so I've taken we're trying to build a mental health like task force kind of thing, at our school, and so it was actually on great like stride before the whole coronavirus, and I think it will be implemented when the school year starts up again because we had our first meeting was supposed to be in May, and so unfortunately it was canceled, but everything's in place, and so once that does happen, I'm hoping that American High School can also be up to par and have a mental health support system for our students as well. Yeah.
If I could make a comment on that, American High School is one of the schools we're going to identify moving forward. So I had a phone call with Megan Barrington, the principal, to see if she was willing, and she was definitely willing and eager. So hopefully you and I could maybe chat offline to see how we could merge the two with that hopefully position I get to hire within the next month. But American High School is one of the schools we identified as we need to spend some time over there to get them started. So you'll be getting some assistance hopefully at American High School next year.
That sounds great.
Okay, if nobody else wants to talk about or has any comments about the wellness centers, then we can go into our next agenda topic,
Wait,
which would
could I?
be, oh, sorry, yeah,
Sorry.
Emily?
Could I add on another thing about wellness centers? Kind of just to add on what Lavanya said.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's like been much direct communication between Surfboard E and this committee or the board members, but earlier on this year, Surfboard E kind of like took it into its own hands to try to initiate this student mental health task force and a wellness center at all 5 of our high schools. Just because at Irvington, I worked with our admin like literally the first day of school to work on at Irvington. So there was a lot more momentum on it in the beginning of the year. I just wonder if there's if I could get like a clarification on like the communication that's happening between like either like what Surfboard E is doing versus what like this like what either Mr. Bailey or the rest of this task force is doing in ensuring of having like a wellness center at these schools. Like I don't want it to be that like there's two different people trying to start wellness centers at these schools. So I don't know if there's like communication between the two or not.
And I think hopefully what we envision with this new position that will hopefully get hired within the next month, that is the sole purpose of that position is I think it's actually called District Health and Wellness Center something. I forgot what the next word was on that contract. So that is exactly that person's drive is to make sure that one, the students are aware of what's available at their sites, and then two, be in that conduit with the outside providers and the school site to make sure that the wellness centers are properly staffed. So part of that position will be doing that outreach to all the schools on a regular basis because that is their sole task for the year. And that's what I said about the survey. Also, as one of their rubrics is, how aware are students, how aware are they of the wellness centers at their sites or starting to build a wellness center? How aware are they? So just like you said, Emily, that is something that this person's really going to be critical in. And it would probably be nice if we maybe invited that person maybe in the fall next year so they could kind of give us a timeline on when things could start really rolling at the sites. Maybe put that already on one of the first or second agendas for next school year to see where we are with that. But that is the sole purpose of that position.
Thank you.
It looks like Ms. Hill, you had another question or a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that the wellness centers, as we're moving into the fall and with schools, who knows if they're going to open, how they're going to open, that whoever we are hiring for these positions are equipped with laptops. That should be part of their their sign-on, their onboarding, so they can actually have virtual meetings with students and start outreaching.
Yes, all new employees get a laptop when they get them started. And plus, our counselors and some psychs went through a training a couple Fridays ago from Cal State East Bay about teleconference, telehealth. So we're starting to explore that because we also need prepared if we're doing any type of distance learning in the fall. We want to make sure our counselors are prepared for that. And what does that look like? What are the pros? What are the cons? What are some indications that we need to be aware of? Simple as, can you always see the students' hands? What are they doing? There's a whole bunch of things that our counselors need PD on, and we have already done one day with that with them, and we plan to do many, many more before next fall.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
Okay, so I think then we can go into our next agenda item, which is going to be discussing the topics for the next school year that we want to, I guess, tackle and go over. So if anybody has any ideas that they want to put out, this is a good time to do that.
I would like to, when and if that new district health wellness center person is hired, have them present at maybe the first meeting of what their task is for the year, so everyone's aware of what we are doing moving forward. We have representatives from each of the schools, and then we can make sure that all the junior high and elementaries are also aware of kind of what we're working towards once that position is hired. And I'd rather do that earlier in the year so we kind of know, and then you kind of hold us accountable if we said we were going to do something. It's kind of nice to be accountable to a group that will make sure that we're held accountable. Trustee Campbell?
Oh, yes. Did we talk about physical education? I know we had mentioned that there was some students who were not taking physical education in 12th grade. And I was wondering if we could get a report on physical education and what the requirements are and who's taking it and when you're supposed to take it and how we can expand that. Okay.
That would be no problem.
Okay. Thank
Ms.
you.
Ortiz?
Thank you. So I remember at the beginning of the meeting, we had a public comment about COVID-19 and the effects of that on reopening the school. So I was just wondering what our capabilities would be in that kind of region.
In regards to once we open up, or how are we going to open up?
In both of those regards, yeah.
I know our superintendent, Dr. Zamora, is putting a task force together right now on closing the school and possibly opening it up to school. I know we are monitoring Alameda County and CDC along with CDE with any updates. We don't think we're going to get much guidance, to be honest with you. I think it's going to be up to us. But there is a task force that is being built to discuss that. And I believe there was a student rep at our meeting last Friday when we talked about closing the school. So I'm pretty sure that Dr. Zamora will also have a student rep moving forward for opening up of the school for next year.
All right, thank you.
Were we thinking of bringing back the nutrition person to talk about nutrition?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things we started, and then as we know, everything kind of got sideways. We do have to look at those BP and ARs to make sure that we're in line with the new laws. So that could definitely be one of our topics that we have to get done next year. And I would like to bring that to the board before winter, if possible. So that should be fairly early next fall to start working on that.
Okay.
I have a quick question, Aria. Can I butt in here? I know the district has been very good about giving out meals. Do we know how long that's going to continue? I presume that's just until the end of the school year.
Oh, yeah, I can answer that. We are planning right now to go to June 30th. And then beyond that, we are still waiting from guidance from the California Department of Education. And they're going to let us know if we can kind of continue doing the meal distribution the same way until, the first day of next school year.
And one last question, since it does appear that there's going to be a summer school, do we know that every student in the Fremont Unified School District does have capabilities to access the internet and have a laptop?
Yeah, our director of elementary ed and secondary ed have reached out to the principals to make sure that students have access. We have weekly numbers that we're going off of. We've given out plenty of Chromebooks for students of need, and we also have purchased, or the district has purchased, hotspots for students who might not have access. So we believe we're pretty confident that yes, students should have a laptop that they would be able to use during summer school.
And we're only doing summer school for credit recovery. So, and to Mr. Bailey's point, the school district, our IT department did purchase like 300 laptops and 200 or so hotspots to ensure that families who, maybe were sharing Wi-Fi access would have access. And that was not just for the students, but for teachers also who were not able to have, the bandwidth and the stuff that they needed to be able to help with the distance learning. So they've identified them all, they think, who needed it, and we were able to purchase that. There's a presentation that's in this week's board agenda. If you go to the board agenda and look at the COVID-19 regular agenda item, you can see some information about that acquisition on the board agenda for this week.
I feel like summer school is going to be even more of a challenge for the teachers because a lot of teaching has not happened on Zoom meetings. Just assignments have been given, and I'm really worried about how these kids are going to keep up that have to make it through these assignments with literally no instructions.
Right. And I know probably part of the task force, when they think about coming back, they're going to have to think about instructional services and what that's going to look like, and remediation, and because kids they would have lost 4 or 5 months of real instruction day to day in the room. So I'm certain that that's going to be a consideration that they're going to be thinking about.
Yeah, we're already
it's confusing why they have lost that, because if you look at other school districts, they have regular school 8 till 3:30 all the way through with Zoom meetings hour after hour with instructions.
Yeah. And what we are working in instructional services is really the August PD days. One day is going to be focused on mental health. We're concerned that we're going to have some students who are going to have school avoidance because this is just getting more and more in their behavior, not going to school. So we're going to spend mental health on one of those days where teachers will get professional development on. trauma-informed classrooms, community circles. We have a whole litany of items we're going to cover. And then the second day is just like you said, is that our educators need to know, I have teachers in my family, my daughter and my sister, my wife, I have little kids in elementary. There's going to be a gap that we need to make sure that next fall, if you're a third grader, well, you need to know what they really didn't get in second grade towards the end, and how are you going to almost reteach before you start really getting into the third grade curriculum. So that's going to be day 2 of our PD. So we are working on that as you speak, because we're a little bit nervous about that as well, to be honest with you. Because it's not the same doing a virtual. I have a second grader and a fourth grader. My second grader's done with his work in an hour. You cannot replace a teacher in the classroom.
It sounds like he wasn't doing any work.
I was not the best second grade teacher.
Oh, I see.
Well, I know we're going to finish up here real soon. I just wanted to let the seniors and the juniors and probably do we have any sophomore students on the committee? I think it's just juniors and seniors, right? I just wanted to wish you guys all good luck on AP exams if you still have them left. I know my daughter is kind of powering away in her room. And for the seniors, good luck in your next year and enjoy college, whichever way it's going to look like. It's going to be, you're part of history and you're going to make it work.
I second that.
Thank you.
I third that.
Are there any other new topics that people wanted to bring up for discussion for the next school year? Okay, then I think that we can wrap up this meeting then. It was super great to talk to all of you guys and see some of your faces, but also hear all of your guys' voices. And hopefully we can all meet up again soon. And to all the seniors over there, seniors on this call, we really love you guys so much. And as juniors, I know we're all in awe of how well you guys have handled the situation. And just so, yeah, sending all my love. And you guys are going to do amazing next year.
Bye.